Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make caramels, and this is what they look like. You can either cut them into squares or you can cut them into little long rectangles and wrap them in wax paper, really nice for a gift. And these ones are soft and kind of chewy and so creamy smooth, wonderful. So when you make candy, have everything out, all your ingredients, everything all ready, because you don't want to be stopping along the way. The first thing we need to do is prepare our pan. You will need an 8-inch square pan, and I like to line it with a piece of foil and then lightly butter your foil. And have a little bit of overlap with your foil, because that way we can easily lift it out and makes it so much easier to cut our caramels. So that's that. And then for our ingredients, you will need 1½ teaspoons of pure vanilla extract, 1½ teaspoons of salt. I like to use either kosher salt or you could use a sea salt, and 1 tablespoon, 13 grams of butter. Now put that aside, because once we make our caramel, then we will be folding that in. So for our ingredients, you will first have a heavy-duty pot, a pretty big one, a medium large, because this does tend to foam up, and you don't want it, which I've had boiling over. You don't want that. So use a good sized pot. And the first ingredient we need is 1½ cups, which is 360 milliliters of heavy cream or heavy whipping cream. And that's cream with somewhere between a 35 and a 40% butterfat content. And then we will also need 1 cup, 200 grams of granulated white sugar, two-thirds of a cup, that's 140 grams of firmly packed light brown sugar. And then we also need 1/3 of a cup, 80 milliliters of light corn syrup. And I find it best to just either spray your measuring cup with one of those non-stick sprays, or lightly butter it before you measure out your corn syrup. And then that way it really kind of just flows right out of your cup. You can do that with honey or molasses or anything like that. Good thing to do. So now what we're going to do is just put this over medium heat. And you want to stir it constantly, because we want to make sure that all that sugar dissolves. So keep stirring it, and either use a heat-proof spatula or a wooden spoon. And then we're just going to bring it just up to a boil. Okay, so as you can see, we've now come up to a boil. So now adjust your heat. You don't want like a really hard boil, you just want a nice, steady boil. And stop stirring. Now I don't like to stir my caramel as it's cooking, because I find even if you use a wooden spoon, there is that chance that you can start to get some sugar crystallization. So what I do is I just find every once in a while I just swirl my pan like so, because you don't want it to scorch. And that's another reason why you don't want the heat, you're boiled too hard, because you don't want it to burn. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bring this up, just boil it until it reaches 250 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 121 degrees Celsius. Now that will give us a fairly firm caramel that's kind of soft and chewy. It holds its shape, it tends to with time spread out. So if you like a really hard caramel, you can take that up a few more degrees. So what we're going to do, you need a candy thermometer for this. At least I find that's the easiest way. You can either have one like this, or now there's the digital ones. And another thing, what we want to do, because we're not going to stir this, is we want to brush periodically if there's any sugar crystals that have formed on the sides of your saucepan. Just have a little bowl of warm water and a pastry brush, and then just take and wash down the sides as you need to. So that's all I'm going to do. Every once in a while, check it. If I have to, brush down the sides, gently swirl your pan a bit, and continue to cook it until, and if you're using any type of candy thermometer, do not have the bottom, touch the bottom of your saucepan, have it up a little bit. And it's nice, these handy little clips, makes it easy. So this probably will take about 15 minutes, somewhere in that 15-20 minutes. And just watch it carefully. Okay, so once it reaches 250, immediately take it off the heat. I'm going to remove my thermometer there. And then what we're going to do is put in our vanilla, our salt, and our butter. Now we'll foam up a bit and just give it a really good stir. Be very careful, it's hot. And that looks good. Make sure that butter's all melted in. And then we're just going to pour it into our pan. Okay. And put your pan on a wire rack, and then just give it a good stir to even it out, and then just leave it undisturbed until it's nice and firm. It really depends on how warm your room is. I find at least about 2 hours. So now our caramel is now nice and firm. So a couple things. I found that when I was cooking the caramel, it took about 25 minutes. And also, once you pour your caramel into your pan, you will find your pot is pretty dirty and that caramel really sticks. So just fill it with some water and put it on the stove and bring it up just to a boil and then turn it off and let it sit, and that will soften that caramel. It'll be so much easier to clean. So now, once your caramel has become firm, just peel back the foil, and then you cut it. You can either use like a pizza cutter or just a knife, whichever. And like I said, you could cut it into squares, but either way, and as big, as small, I mean, really, you can do whatever you want here. I tend to like to do it into the long little pieces. And I usually do it in half and then half again. I find that's a nice size. And then you can kind of, it's very pliable at this point, so you can kind of, if it gets a little, your edges are not, you can just straighten them out. And then I've just taken and cut wax paper. And then I just put my caramel there in the center, and then just, I find this way, it does keep it, when you wrap each caramel in wax paper, it keeps it a lot fresher, a lot longer. And depending on the humidity in your room, you know, it can cause your caramel to become grainy, which we don't want. So wrapping them individually, I find, is the best way to keep them fresh. So really, I mean, how cool does that look? I mean, great gift. And it's really, it's not that expensive to make or that difficult once you get the hang of it. And I find, actually, especially because I live in a humid climate, I like to store my caramels in the refrigerator. I find it slows that, because otherwise I find after, often my caramel after quite a few days will turn grainy because of the humidity. So what I do is I do this, wrap them individually, then I put it in a Ziploc bag, and then try to get the air out of it, and then store it in the fridge. I mean, several weeks they'll last that way. It really is a great gift, or just, I mean, kids love it. I like it. Oh, that's very nice. Nice and soft, chewy, a little bit of bite to it. Very creamy. Really just wonderful. So enjoy. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com.